My name is Amelia Taylor, and at 32 years old, I thought I had finally figured out how to deal with my complicated relationship with my wealthy parents. Then that gold embossed invitation arrived for their 35th anniversary celebration at the Ritz-Carlton. Despite years of criticism and disappointment, I decided to attend, hoping for reconciliation. I spent too much on a new dress, styled my hair perfectly, and arrived feeling genuinely hopeful. The ballroom was dripping with opulence, but when my parents spotted me across the room, their faces hardened. My mother approached, leaned in close, and whispered the words that shattered me, "You're not welcome here." Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare yourself for a story about finding worth in a world that tries to define it for you. Growing up in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most affluent neighborhoods, should have been a dream. Our brownstone townhouse with its manicured garden and historical significance was the envy of many. From the outside, the Taylor family appeared perfect. My father, William Taylor, built his reputation as one of Boston's most ruthless corporate attorneys, while my mother, Susan, maintained her position in high society with calculated precision. Their world revolved around appearances, connections, and status. Unfortunately, their children were simply extensions of that carefully cultivated image. From my earliest memories, I understood that love in our household came with conditions. When I was 7, I painted a colorful family portrait for my mother's birthday. Instead of displaying it proudly like my friends' parents would have, she criticized how the colors clashed with our living room decor and tucked it away in a drawer. That was my first lesson that my natural inclinations were somehow wrong. My artistic talents continued to develop throughout elementary school. My art teachers consistently praised my work, suggesting I had genuine potential. But at home, these achievements were dismissed as nice hobbies that would ultimately prove impractical. My father would ruffle my hair and say, "It's cute that you enjoy painting, Amelia, but real success requires more substantial skills." Meanwhile, they framed every certificate and trophy my brother Jake received for debate club and math competitions. High school brought more of the same dynamic. I maintained excellent grades while also developing my artistic portfolio, often staying late in the art studio to perfect my techniques. My advanced placement art teacher entered my work in a prestigious regional competition, where I won first place. The local newspaper featured my painting and interview. I thought finally my parents would see value in my passion. Instead, they focused on my B+ in calculus that same semester, suggesting it would limit my college options. Jake, 2 years my senior, was the golden child. His path aligned perfectly with our parents' vision. He joined the debate team, became student body president, and ultimately attended Harvard Business School. Every achievement was celebrated with dinner parties and proud announcements to their social circle. Meanwhile, my accomplishments in art competitions and school exhibitions warranted only passing acknowledgement, if mentioned at all. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to Rhode Island School of Design with a partial scholarship, an achievement that thrilled me to my core. The same week, I received an acceptance letter from Brown University, which my parents had pressured me to apply to despite my lack of interest in their programs. "Amelia, this is wonderful news," my father said, waving the Brown letter while completely ignoring the RISD acceptance on the table. "We always knew you could get into an Ivy if you applied yourself." "But Dad, I want to go to RISD. It's one of the best art schools in the country." My mother sighed dramatically. "Darling, it's time to put away childish things. Brown will give you connections and opportunities. What will an art degree get you besides a lifetime of financial struggle?" "It's my passion," I insisted. "I don't want to spend 4 years studying something I have no interest in." "Passion doesn't pay the bills," my father countered. "We'll only financially support your education if you choose Brown. Otherwise, you're on your own." That ultimatum forced me to make the most difficult decision of my young life. I chose RISD and my passion over my parents' approval and financial support. Working multiple jobs while maintaining a full course load was exhausting, but every completed project confirmed I had made the right choice. I graduated with honors, though my parents only reluctantly attended the ceremony, making it clear they still considered my choice a mistake. The years that followed were challenging. While Jake stepped into a ready-made position at a prestigious financial firm thanks to our father's connections, I started from scratch. I rented a tiny studio apartment that doubled as my workspace and began building my interior design business one small client at a time. My parents made occasional calls on holidays, but these conversations were strained and superficial. They never visited my apartment or showed interest in my growing business. Interior design, my mother once scoffed over the phone. At least you found a way to make your art somewhat practical. Over the past decade, I had built my business into a respectable boutique firm. Amelia Taylor Designs now employed 3 junior designers and had a portfolio of residential and small commercial projects throughout Boston. My work had been featured in several local magazines, though nothing that would impress my parents' social circle. I had created a life I was proud of, despite rather than because of my family connections. Our contact remained limited to those obligatory holiday calls and the occasional family event where absence would have caused too much gossip. I had learned to protect myself by keeping expectations low and visits brief. Which is why the anniversary invitation caught me completely off guard after years of such minimal contact. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in early May, the heavy cream envelope standing out among bills and junk mail. The return address, embossed in gold, displayed my parents' name and Beacon Hill address. My stomach tightened as I slid my finger under the seal, unsure what to expect. Inside was a formal invitation to celebrate the 35th wedding anniversary of William and Susan Taylor at the Ritz-Carlton, Boston. The event would include a cocktail hour followed by a formal dinner and dancing. The cardstock was thick and expensive, with gold foil accents that caught the light. At the bottom, someone had handwritten, "We hope you can join us," though the generic cursive gave no hint whether my mother or an assistant had penned the note. I placed the invitation on my kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. It had been almost 2 years since I'd seen my parents in person at a cousin's wedding, where our interaction consisted of brief pleasantries before they circulated to speak with more important guests. This invitation felt like a potential olive branch, though experience had taught me not to be overly optimistic. My phone rang that evening as I was still contemplating the invitation. Jake's name flashed on the screen. "So, you got the invite?" he asked after our usual greetings. "Yeah, just today." "Are you going?" "Of course. I'm actually calling to make sure you come too." His voice had an unusual earnestness. "I think it would mean a lot to them." "Really?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "Since when do they care about my presence at their social events?" "Come on, Leah," he said, using my childhood nickname. "People change. They're getting older. Mom mentioned specifically that she hoped you'd come." That gave me pause. My mother rarely expressed any desire to see me. "She actually said that?" "Yes," Jake insisted. "Look, I know things have been difficult, but maybe this is their way of trying to bridge the gap. 35 years is a big milestone. It's got them reflective about family and what matters." After we hung up, I found myself filled with a dangerous emotion, hope. Maybe Jake was right. Perhaps age was softening my parents. Maybe they were finally ready to accept me as I was rather than as the daughter they wished I had become. Over the next few days, the invitation sat prominently on my counter as I fluctuated between determination to protect myself by declining and the persistent hope that this could represent a turning point in our relationship. By the weekend, hope had won out. I RSVP'd yes and began thinking about what to wear. The event was black tie optional, which meant my usual business attire wouldn't suffice. Despite knowing better, I wanted to impress them. I spent an entire Saturday shopping, eventually finding a midnight blue floor-length gown with a subtle shimmer that complemented my complexion and dark hair. The price tag made me wince, but I justified the expense as an investment in a potential new chapter with my family. As the date approached, I found myself rehearsing potential conversations. I would talk about my business successes without sounding defensive. I would ask thoughtful questions about their lives. I would be mature and gracious, rising above old hurts. I even prepared a heartfelt toast I might give if the moment seemed right, congratulating them on their long marriage and expressing hope for closer family bonds moving forward. The night before the event, I barely slept. I alternated between optimistic scenarios where my parents proudly introduced me to their friends and anxiety dreams where they ignored me completely. By morning, I was exhausted but determined to look my best despite the dark circles under my eyes. I spent the afternoon at an upscale salon getting my hair and makeup professionally done, another expense I rarely indulged in. As the stylist transformed my usually practical bob into an elegant updo, I imagined my mother finally looking at me with approval instead of her usual critical assessment. "Big event tonight," the stylist asked as she secured another pin. "My parents' anniversary," I replied. 35 years. "That's wonderful. They must be so proud of you." I smiled without correcting her assumption. "It's at the Ritz." "Fancy. Well, you look absolutely stunning. They'll be thrilled when they see you." Her confidence bolstered mine. Perhaps this would indeed be the night that changed everything. I arrived at the Ritz-Carlton 45 minutes before the scheduled cocktail hour. Needing to calm my nerves, I headed to the hotel bar for a glass of wine. The bartender served me a crisp Sauvignon Blanc, and I sipped it slowly, watching other guests arrive. Most were older couples in expensive attire, clearly from my parents' social circle. I recognized a few faces from childhood events but couldn't match names to most of them. A distinguished-looking couple entered, the woman draped in what I recognized as Valentino. They greeted several other guests with air kisses and practiced smiles. These were my parents' people, a world I had never quite fit into despite being born into it. As I finished my wine, I reminded myself that I had built something valuable on my own terms. Whatever happened tonight, I had that to hold on to. At precisely 6 o'clock, I gathered my clutch and made my way toward the grand ballroom, where a tasteful sign announced the Taylor anniversary celebration. With one final deep breath, I stepped through the doorway into whatever awaited me. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton had been transformed into a scene of breathtaking elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements of white roses and orchids. Ice sculptures in the shape of swans flanked a champagne fountain at the center of the room. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their classical melodies providing the perfect sophisticated soundtrack to the gathering. Several dozen guests were already circulating, champagne flutes in hand. The women sparkled with diamonds while the men stood straight in their tailored tuxedos. I recognized my father's law partners, several prominent Boston families, and even a state senator among the attendees. This was clearly more than a family celebration, it was a carefully orchestrated social event designed to reinforce my parents' status. As I hesitated at the entrance, my second cousin Patricia spotted me and approached with a smile. "Amelia. What a lovely surprise. It's been years." She air-kissed both my cheeks. "You look wonderful, dear. Are you still doing that decorating thing?" "Interior design," I corrected gently. "Yes, my firm is doing quite well. We just completed a project for the new boutique hotel in Copley Square." "How interesting," she said, though her eyes were already scanning the room over my shoulder. "You should speak with my friend Dolores. She's redoing her Nantucket home." "Oh, there she is now. Excuse me." And just like that, I was alone again. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and took a small sip, allowing the bubbles to settle my nerves. Across the room, I finally spotted my parents, holding court amid a circle of admirers. My mother wore a designer gown in pale gold that complemented her still slender figure and expertly colored blonde hair. My father stood tall beside her in a classic tuxedo, his silver hair lending him an air of distinguished authority. They hadn't seen me yet. For a moment, I considered leaving before they did, avoiding the potential disappointment entirely. But Jake's words echoed in my mind. Maybe they had changed. Maybe they truly wanted reconciliation. I wouldn't know unless I took this chance. With renewed determination, I began making my way across the ballroom. The journey felt interminable as I navigated around clusters of guests, nodding politely to the few familiar faces. I felt eyes tracking my movement, whispering assessments of my appearance and speculating about my presence. The weight of their collective judgment made each step heavier than the last. Finally, I reached the edge of my parents' circle just as it was breaking up. My mother turned and saw me, her perfectly made-up face registering momentary surprise before settling into a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Amelia," she said, her voice pitched to carry just the right distance. "You came." She leaned in for the briefest of cheek kisses, the familiar scent of her expensive perfume enveloping me. My father turned at the sound of my name, his expression impassive as he gave me a curt nod. "Amelia. You look appropriate." Coming from him, this constituted high praise, and I felt a small flicker of victory. "Thank you, Dad. Congratulations to you both on 35 years. The celebration looks beautiful." "Susan always knows how to put together a proper event," he replied, glancing around with satisfaction. "The governor sends his regrets, but his chief of staff is here representing him." Of course, my father's first comment would be about political connections rather than family sentiment. Some things never changed. "William," my mother interrupted, touching his arm lightly. "I need to speak with Amelia for a moment. Would you check that the head table arrangements are correct?" He nodded and moved away without another word to me. My mother's smile remained fixed as she took my elbow and guided me toward a relatively quiet corner near a large floral arrangement. "I need to ask you something directly," she said, her voice dropping to ensure privacy. "Who sent you an invitation?" The question caught me completely off guard. "What do you mean?" "I received it in the mail, just like everyone else." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. "That's impossible. You're not on the guest list." "But I got the invitation," I insisted, confusion mounting. "I RSVP'd. Jake called to make sure I was coming." At the mention of my brother's name, understanding dawned in her eyes, quickly followed by irritation. "Jake. Of course. He must have sent you one without telling us." She sighed sharply. "Amelia, you're not supposed to be here." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "This event includes important connections for your father's firm and our social standing. We can't have distractions." "Distractions?" I repeated, my voice barely audible over the string quartet. "I'm your daughter." "Yes, well." She glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. "You know how these things work. We have a certain image to maintain." Before I could respond, my father appeared beside us, his expression thunderous. "Susan, Senator Blackwell's wife, was just asking me about our daughter, whom she spotted entering." I had to pretend I knew you had invited her. The way he spoke about me in the third person while I stood right there sent a chill through me. "It was Jake," my mother explained quietly. "He sent her an invitation without consulting us." My father turned his cold gaze on me. "Where is Jake? Is he here yet?" "I haven't seen him," I managed to say, still reeling from the revelation that my presence was unwanted. "He called last week encouraging me to come. He said you both wanted me here." My father scoffed. "Typical Jake, creating complications. He knows better than to mix personal matters with professional opportunities." "Personal matters?" I repeated incredulously. "I'm your daughter at your anniversary celebration, not some scandal you need to hide." "Your choice of career has been embarrassing enough," my father said dismissively. "Playing with fabric swatches and paint samples when you could have had a respectable profession." "My business is successful," I defended, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I employ 3 people. I have clients who value my work. Decorating apartments is hardly the career we envisioned when we provided you with every advantage." My mother's voice dripped with disappointment. "And frankly, Amelia, that dress is at least a season old in design, your jewelry is obviously costume, and your hair looks like you did it yourself. I touched my professionally styled updo self-consciously. I had it done today, actually. Well, you should ask for a refund, she sniffed. The point is, this event includes the editor of Boston Society magazine and several potential clients for your father. We need to present a unified, successful family image. And I don't fit that image, I concluded flatly. We tolerate your choices at private family gatherings, my father stated. But this is different. I think it would be best if you left before dinner is served. The final piece clicked into place. Where's Jake? Did he ever intend to come tonight? My parents exchanged a glance. He called an hour ago, my mother admitted. Some work emergency. He sends his regrets. So I had been completely set up. Jake had encouraged me to attend an event I wasn't welcome at, then conveniently failed to show up himself. Whether it was a well-intentioned but misguided attempt to force a reconciliation or something more malicious, the result was the same, public humiliation. I noticed several guests glancing our way, clearly curious about the tense family conversation occurring in the corner. My humiliation deepened as I realized our confrontation was becoming a spectacle at the very event my parents had wanted to protect from scandal. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go. Congratulations on 35 years of marriage. I hope it was worth the sacrifices. I turned and walked as steadily as possible toward the ballroom exit, fighting the urge to run. My vision blurred with unshed tears as I pushed through the heavy door into the mercifully empty hallway. Following signs for the restroom, I ducked inside and locked myself in a stall just as the first sob escaped my throat. The beautiful bathroom with its marble countertops and fresh flower arrangements became my refuge as I tried to process what had just happened. My own parents had asked me to leave their anniversary celebration because I was an embarrassment to them. After 32 years, I still wasn't good enough. The rejection triggered a cascade of memories: my 10th birthday when my mother criticized my posture during my own party, my high school art show when my father checked his watch repeatedly before leaving early for a more important engagement, my college graduation when they attended out of obligation but made it clear they considered my degree a waste of potential. With trembling hands, I pulled my phone from my clutch and texted Jake, "Thanks for encouraging me to come to an event where I wasn't actually invited. Mom and Dad just asked me to leave before dinner. Where are you?" His response came quickly, "What? They weren't supposed to do that. I'm stuck at the office but heading there now. Don't leave." I typed back, "Too late. They made it very clear I'm not welcome." Some work emergency, huh? It's real, I swear. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I thought if you just showed up, they'd have to accept you. They told me they regretted the distance between you. Well, they lied to you. Or you're lying to me. Either way, I'm done. I silenced my phone as it began ringing with Jake's call. I couldn't bear to hear his excuses right now. I needed to leave with whatever dignity I had left. Taking several deep breaths, I wiped away my tears and repaired my makeup as best I could. I squared my shoulders and rehearsed walking out with my head held high. I was no longer that desperate child seeking approval. I was a successful business owner who didn't need their validation. At least, that's what I tried to tell myself as I prepared to walk back through the crowd. As I exited the restroom, I considered sneaking out a side entrance to avoid passing through the ballroom again. But that felt like giving my parents exactly what they wanted, my disappearance. Instead, I decided to leave through the main entrance, showing everyone that I was choosing to go rather than being banished. I took a steadying breath and pushed open the ballroom door. As I began my walk across the room, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. My mother's distinctive voice carried from behind a large floral arrangement where she stood speaking with an older couple I recognized as longtime family friends. "It's such a shame about Amelia," my mother was saying in a practiced tone of parental concern. "We've done everything we could to support her through her troubles." "She looked well tonight," the woman responded. "Is she getting the help she needs?" "We've paid for the best therapists," my father interjected smoothly. Unfortunately, she's always been resistant to guidance. Dropped out of Brown after we pulled strings to get her admitted. I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. I had never attended Brown, nor had they paid for any therapists. These were outright lies. Such a difficult situation, the man sympathized. Our friends the Prestons went through something similar with their youngest. Sometimes despite the best parenting, children make self-destructive choices. We keep hoping she'll turn things around, my mother sighed dramatically. We've subsidized that little design hobby of hers, hoping responsible work might stabilize her. William even sent some clients her way, though we had to quietly hire professionals to fix her mistakes afterward. Another complete fabrication. They had never sent me a single client, and I had built my business entirely without their help. In fact, they had actively discouraged potential clients within their social circle from hiring me. "You're such dedicated parents," the woman said sympathetically. "Not many would continue supporting an adult child through such prolonged instability." I couldn't listen to another word. The depth of their deception stunned me. They hadn't merely rejected me. They had created an entirely fictional narrative about me to maintain their perfect image. In their version, they were the long-suffering, supportive parents of a troubled daughter, rather than the coldly disapproving critics of a child who simply chose her own path. This realization was the final breaking point. Whatever remaining hope I had harbored for eventual reconciliation evaporated in that moment. They would never acknowledge the reality of our relationship or take responsibility for their part in our estrangement. Their image would always matter more than the truth. I walked quickly toward the exit, no longer caring who saw me leave or what they might think. The ornate lobby of the Ritz-Carlton passed in a blur as I retrieved my car from the valet. Only when I was safely inside my vehicle did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. I drove aimlessly through Boston's evening streets, unable to face returning to my apartment where the invitation still sat on my counter like a cruel joke. The city lights blurred through my tears as I navigated familiar roads without conscious direction. Eventually, I found myself parking outside my studio in the South End. The converted warehouse space that housed Amelia Taylor Designs was dark and quiet at this hour. I unlocked the door and stepped into the familiar environment that represented everything I had built without my parents' support or approval. Design samples, project boards, and client folders surrounded me, tangible evidence of my legitimate success. In the silence of my own creative space, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. Sinking onto the office sofa, still wearing my expensive gown, I sobbed without restraint. Years of seeking approval, of making excuses for their behavior, of hoping for change all poured out in waves of grief. I mourned not only tonight's humiliation but the loving family I had never had and would never have. My phone rang, interrupting my breakdown. I expected Jake again, but instead saw my best friend Zoe's name on the screen. Somehow, she always seemed to sense when I was in crisis. "Hey, I just had this weird feeling I should call you," she said when I answered. "Are you okay? You sound like you're crying." "I'm at the studio," I managed between sobs. "My parents' anniversary dinner was tonight." "Oh no. What happened?" "They asked me to leave," I said, the words still shocking even as I spoke them. "I wasn't actually invited. Jake sent the invitation without telling them. They said I was an embarrassment." "Those toxic, elitist jerks," Zoe exclaimed with immediate loyalty. "I'm coming over right now. Don't move." "You don't have to." Already grabbing my keys. 20 minutes. True to her word, Zoe arrived shortly after, still wearing her dental office scrubs and carrying a bottle of wine and a pint of ice cream. One look at my tear-stained face and evening gown, and she wrapped me in a fierce hug. "Tell me everything," she said, kicking off her shoes and settling beside me on the sofa. As I recounted the evening's events, including the overheard conversation, Zoe's expression shifted from sympathy to outrage. "They're making up stories about you being unstable? After everything you've accomplished on your own? That's beyond toxic, Amelia. That's legitimately abusive." Her naming it so directly made me flinch, but I couldn't deny the truth in her assessment. What my parents had done went beyond mere disapproval or disappointment. They had actively constructed a false narrative that painted them as heroes and me as broken, all to protect their precious social standing. I don't know why I keep hoping they'll change, I admitted, accepting the glass of wine she poured. 32 years of evidence suggests they never will. Because you're a good person who wants to believe people can grow, Zoe said, squeezing my hand. But sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is accept that some people are incapable of giving us what we need. As I sipped my wine and listened to Zoe's unwavering support, I felt something shift inside me. The pain remained, but alongside it grew a new emotion, anger. For decades, sadness and disappointment had been my primary responses to my parents' treatment. Now, righteous anger began to burn through the fog of hurt, illuminating a path forward that didn't involve seeking their approval. By the time Zoe helped me back to my apartment in the early hours of the morning, I had cried myself empty. But in that emptiness, I sensed the beginning of something new taking root. The determination to finally stop allowing my parents' opinion to define my worth. I woke the next morning on my office sofa, still wearing my crumpled evening gown. Zoe had draped her jacket over me before leaving for her early shift at the dental clinic. A note on the coffee table read, "Called your first client and rescheduled. Take the day for yourself. Love you. Z." My head throbbed and my eyes felt swollen from crying, but beneath the physical discomfort was a strange sense of clarity. Something fundamental had shifted during the night. For the first time, I could see my parents' behavior without making excuses for them or blaming myself. The studio door opened, and Zoe appeared with a paper bag and coffee tray. "Breakfast delivery," she announced. "Bagels, cream cheese, and the strongest coffee they had." "You're an angel," I said, accepting the much-needed caffeine. "Don't you have patients this morning?" "Rescheduled my first two. Some things are more important." She sat beside me. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted. "But also, different. Clearer somehow." "That's what happens when you finally see the truth without filters," Zoe said, unwrapping a bagel. "It hurts like hell, but at least you know where you stand." As we ate, I checked my phone to find multiple missed calls and texts from Jake. I wasn't ready to speak with him yet, but I did send a brief message, "I'm safe. Need space." His response was immediate, "Please let me explain." "Not what you think." I put the phone away without replying. Whatever his intentions had been, the result was the same: public humiliation and the final destruction of any hope for a normal relationship with our parents. After breakfast, I called my therapist Dr. Morrison and explained the situation. She offered me an emergency session that afternoon, which I gratefully accepted. I needed professional help to process the magnitude of what had happened and what it meant for my future. "What you experienced was a profound rejection, Dr. Morrison said as I sat in her comfortable office later that day. "But it's important to recognize that this rejection says far more about your parents than it does about you." "I know that intellectually," I replied. "But emotionally, it still feels like I'm that little girl desperately trying to make them proud." "That's because rejection by parents cuts to our core identity," she explained. "We're biologically wired to seek their approval. Breaking that pattern requires conscious effort and time." We spent the hour examining the patterns in my relationship with my parents and how last night had clarified the reality I had been trying to avoid acknowledging. Dr. Morrison helped me see that my parents' behavior wasn't just disappointing, it was actively harmful. "You've been seeking validation that they're fundamentally incapable of giving," she said gently. "Not because you're unworthy, but because their definition of worth is dangerously narrow and tied to their own insecurities." As I left her office, I felt the beginning of acceptance taking root. Maybe I couldn't change my parents, but I could change how much power I gave their opinions over my life. When I arrived home, Jake was waiting outside my apartment building. He looked uncharacteristically disheveled in wrinkled clothes, his normally perfectly styled hair a mess. "Amelia, please," he called as I approached. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Part of me wanted to walk past him, but the larger part needed answers. Fine. 5 minutes. Inside my apartment, Jake paced nervously before finally sitting on the edge of my sofa. I swear I didn't know they would react that way. They told me they regretted the distance between you. I thought surprising them would force them to include you. So you did send the invitation without telling them, I confirmed. Yes, he admitted. But with good intentions. I really believed they wanted reconciliation. I should have been there. The work emergency was real, I swear, but I should have cancelled it. Did you know they've been telling people I'm unstable? That I dropped out of Brown? That they financially support me and my business? Jake's face fell. I've heard bits and pieces of their version over the years. I've tried to correct it when I can, but... He trailed off, looking genuinely pained. There's something else you need to know, something I discovered recently. He pulled out his phone and showed me an email chain between our father and Gerald Hoffman, a prominent developer who had considered hiring me for a large project last year but suddenly went with another designer. Dad actively interfered with your business, Jake said as I read the messages in which our father subtly but clearly suggested that hiring me would be a mistake. And it wasn't the first time. I found evidence he's done this with at least 3 potential clients. I stared at the screen, a fresh wave of betrayal washing over me. He sabotaged my career while pretending to support me? It gets worse, Jake said grimly. They've been spreading rumors in their social circle about your business ethics. Suggesting you cut corners, overcharge, miss deadlines. I confronted Dad about it last month, which is when he claimed they wanted to make amends. And you believed him? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. I wanted to, Jake admitted. I've been living in denial too, Amelia. It's easier than acknowledging the truth about our parents. As Jake continued revealing the extent of our parents' interference in my life and career, my sadness crystallized into something harder and more defined, anger. Not the destructive, consuming kind, but the clarifying anger that illuminates boundaries and demands self-respect. I'm done, I said when Jake finished. Completely done seeking their approval or acceptance. I don't blame you, he said quietly. I'm sorry I made things worse. What will you do? I asked, genuinely curious about how this revelation would affect his relationship with them. Set better boundaries, he said after a moment's thought. I can't cut them off completely because of my position at the firm, but I can stop enabling their behavior. After Jake left, I called Zoe and my business partner Taylor, asking them to come over for an impromptu strategy session. If my parents had been actively undermining my business, I needed to address it head-on rather than continuing to wonder why certain expected opportunities never materialized. We need to be proactive rather than reactive, Taylor said as we brainstormed around my dining table that evening. Instead of just countering their narrative, we create our own stronger one. Exactly, Zoe agreed. Success is the best revenge. What's the most visible project we could target right now? Taylor snapped her fingers. The Fairmont Foundation Gala. They're looking for a designer to transform their annual charity event space. It's high profile, prestigious, and most importantly, my parents' social circle will be there, I finished, seeing the potential immediately. The application deadline is next week. If we pull together an incredible proposal, this could be a game changer, Taylor said excitedly. The foundation board includes some major influencers in Boston society. For the first time since the disastrous anniversary dinner, I felt a spark of purpose replacing the hurt. This wasn't about proving anything to my parents anymore, it was about refusing to let their actions limit my potential. I would succeed not to gain their approval but despite their interference. Let's do it, I said with newfound determination. But we approach this as a business opportunity, not a personal vendetta. Our work speaks for itself. As my friends and I began planning our approach to the Fairmont Foundation project, I felt a shift in my emotional landscape. The hurt remained, but it no longer dominated. In its place grew something more powerful, the determination to define success on my own terms. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into creating the perfect proposal for the Fairmont Foundation Gala. This annual event raised millions for children's hospitals across New England and attracted Boston's most influential citizens, including, inevitably, my parents. The foundation was seeking a design firm to transform their venue into an enchanted garden theme that would encourage generous donations while providing a memorable experience. Our studio became a hive of activity as I leveraged every professional connection I had developed over the years. Taylor focused on the technical aspects of the lighting and structural elements, while I channeled my artistic background into creating stunning visual concepts that would set us apart from larger, more established firms. "We need to emphasize our boutique advantage," I told my team during one late-night planning session. "The personal attention, the customization, the passion that bigger firms can't match." We worked 16-hour days, fueled by determination and too much coffee. I called in favors from vendors I had built relationships with, securing promises of discounted materials and priority scheduling if we won the contract. Every aspect of our proposal received meticulous attention, from the detailed 3D renderings to the comprehensive budget breakdowns. The physical and emotional toll of such intense work combined with my recent trauma began to show. Dark circles formed under my eyes, and I lost weight from skipping meals. One evening, after everyone else had gone home, I found myself staring at my phone, my father's number on the screen. For a moment, the old impulse to seek validation nearly overwhelmed me. Maybe if they saw how hard I was working, how professional our proposal was. My finger hovered over the call button before I caught myself. This was exactly the pattern Dr. Morrison had helped me identify, seeking approval from people fundamentally incapable of giving it. With deliberate movement, I put the phone away and returned to my designs. The next morning, Zoe showed up at the studio with breakfast and a concerned expression. "Taylor called me. She's worried you're pushing yourself too hard." "We're on a deadline," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The presentation to the foundation board is in 3 days. And you need to be at your best for it," she countered. "Not burned out and running on fumes." She was right, of course. I had been using work as both shield and sword against my feelings, but exhausting myself wouldn't help win the contract. "You're right," I admitted. "I'll delegate more and get some actual sleep tonight." "That's my girl," Zoe smiled. "Remember, this is about showcasing your talent, not proving anything to people who can't see it anyway." Her reminder helped center me. This project wasn't about my parents, it was about creating something beautiful that would help raise money for sick children while advancing my legitimate business. The perspective shift allowed me to approach the final preparations with more balance and clarity. The night before our presentation, I was making final adjustments to our portfolio when Jake unexpectedly appeared at the studio door. "Heard you're pitching to the Fairmont Foundation tomorrow," he said, holding up a bag from my favorite Thai restaurant. "Thought you might need brain food." I hesitated before inviting him in. Our relationship had been strained since the anniversary dinner fiasco, though he had sent several supportive texts in the intervening weeks. "How did you know about the presentation?" I asked as we unpacked the food. "Boston's a small town in certain circles," he replied. "Word gets around. For what it's worth, I think it's brilliant. The Foundation Gala is exactly the kind of showcase your work deserves." We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. "I'm proud of you, Leah. Not just for this project, but for everything you built on your own terms." His words, so different from our parents' constant criticism, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thanks, Jake. That means a lot." "I brought something else," he said, reaching into his briefcase. "Information about who's on the selection committee and their personal design preferences. Thought it might help." I accepted the folder, touched by his support. "You're a good brother." "Most of the time." He laughed. "I'm trying to be better. Setting boundaries with mom and dad isn't easy, but I'm working on it." His visit boosted my confidence, reminding me that while my parents might never appreciate my choices, I wasn't without family support entirely. The morning of the presentation arrived with perfect September weather, sunshine streaming through the studio windows as my team and I gathered for final preparations. We dressed in coordinated professional attire, practiced our timing once more, and headed to the Fairmont Foundation offices. We arrived early to set up our materials in the boardroom. I arranged our portfolio, samples, and digital presentation while Taylor checked the technical equipment. The Foundation's executive director greeted us warmly, mentioning they were seeing 4 design firms today and would make their decision by the end of the week. As the selection committee members filed in, I recognized several prominent Bostonians, including 2 who regularly appeared in photographs with my parents at social events. I pushed aside the momentary anxiety this caused, focusing instead on the opportunity before us. Our presentation flowed perfectly. I spoke with confident passion about our vision for transforming their venue into an enchanted garden that would inspire generosity while creating magical memories. Taylor seamlessly handled questions about logistics and technical details. When we finished, several committee members were nodding appreciatively. "Very impressive, Ms. Taylor," the committee chair said. "Your attention to detail and understanding of our goals is evident. We'll be in touch soon." As we packed up our materials, the Foundation's executive director approached me privately. "Between us, that was the strongest presentation we've seen. The committee was particularly impressed with how you tied the design elements to the emotional experience of giving." Her words sent a surge of professional pride through me. This was recognition based purely on merit, not connections or family name. We celebrated that evening with champagne at the studio, allowing ourselves to hope while knowing the final decision was still pending. The following days passed in a blur of regular client work and nervous anticipation. When my phone rang on Friday afternoon with the Foundation's number, I put it on speaker so my team could hear. "Ms. Taylor, we're pleased to inform you that Amelia Taylor Designs has been selected for the Fairmont Foundation Gala project. Your proposal demonstrated exactly the creativity and understanding we were looking for." Cheers erupted around me as I thanked her professionally and confirmed I would attend the contract signing on Monday. As soon as the call ended, Taylor pulled me into a tight hug. "We did it. This is huge, Amelia. The exposure alone will take us to another level." She was right. The Fairmont Foundation Gala was covered by local media and society publications. Our work would be seen by hundreds of influential potential clients. It was the breakthrough opportunity we had been working toward. The 6 weeks leading up to the gala were intense but exhilarating. We coordinated with vendors, supervised installations, and solved the inevitable last-minute challenges. I was in my element, applying my creative vision while managing the complex logistics of a major event. The night of the gala arrived with perfect weather. I arrived hours early to oversee final preparations, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress that allowed me to blend into the background once guests arrived. My team and I had transformed the historical venue into a breathtaking enchanted garden, with twinkling lights mimicking starlight, living trees creating natural pathways, and handcrafted paper flowers that would be purchased by donors, with each flower representing a specific contribution to the Children's Hospital. As guests began arriving in their formal attire, I stationed myself near the entrance to address any issues. The first wave of attendees audibly gasped as they entered the transformed space, exactly the reaction we had hoped for. The Foundation director sought me out to express her delight, mentioning that donations were already exceeding expectations. Then I saw them. My parents entered arm in arm, my mother resplendent in designer evening wear, my father distinguished in his tuxedo. They paused at the entrance, taking in the surroundings with appreciative expressions, completely unaware that their estranged daughter was responsible for the transformation. Jake entered shortly after them, catching my eye across the room and offering a subtle thumbs up. I remained professional, focusing on ensuring everything ran smoothly rather than dwelling on my parents' presence. Midway through the evening, the Foundation director took the stage for the official program. After thanking major donors, she did something unexpected. "I'd like to take a moment to recognize the creative genius behind tonight's extraordinary transformation. Amelia Taylor of Amelia Taylor Designs has created not just a beautiful environment, but an experience that embodies our mission of bringing light and healing to children. Amelia, would you please join me? A spotlight found me as applause filled the room. With poised professionalism, I joined the director on stage and thanked the foundation for the opportunity to contribute to their important work. As I scanned the audience during my brief remarks, I saw my parents' shocked expressions as they finally realized their embarrassing daughter was being celebrated by the very social circle they had tried to protect from my influence. After leaving the stage, I was approached by numerous guests complimenting the design and inquiring about my services. Among them was the editor of Boston Home magazine, who expressed interest in featuring my work in an upcoming issue. Each conversation reinforced what I had always known but sometimes doubted: my work had legitimate value on its own merits. Eventually, as I had known they would, my parents made their way toward me. Their approach was hesitant, their expressions a complex mix of surprise and calculation. "Amelia," my mother said with forced brightness, "we had no idea you were involved with the foundation. The design is quite creative." "Thank you," I replied politely, maintaining professional composure. "You should have told us," my father said, lowering his voice. "We could have put in a good word with the committee. Several members are old friends." The irony of his offer after years of undermining my career was not lost on me. That wasn't necessary. My work speaks for itself. "Well, clearly it does," my mother conceded, glancing around at the admiring guests nearby. "We've always supported your creative endeavors, of course." This brazen rewriting of history was exactly what I had expected. In their version of reality, they would now claim to have been supportive all along, especially since my success was being witnessed by their peers. "If you'll excuse me," I said with calm dignity, "I need to speak with the catering manager about the dessert service." I walked away without looking back, choosing to engage with people who genuinely appreciated my work rather than those who only valued it when it reflected well on them. As I crossed the room, several guests stopped me to express admiration for the design, each conversation reinforcing my professional confidence. The gala was an unqualified success, raising a record amount for the Children's Hospital and generating significant positive press. As the evening wound down and guests departed, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment untainted by my parents' belated and insincere approval. For perhaps the first time in my life, their opinion truly didn't matter. I had defined success on my own terms and achieved it despite their interference rather than because of their support. 6 months after the Fairmont Foundation Gala, the trajectory of my business had fundamentally changed. The Boston Home magazine feature had led to a cascade of media interest, with my designs appearing in several national publications. Inquiries from potential clients increased so dramatically that I had to start a waiting list for new projects and hire 2 additional designers to handle the workload. We moved into a larger studio space in a renovated factory building, with room for my growing team and a proper client meeting area. The exposed brick walls and industrial windows provided the perfect backdrop for our creative work, while the expanded square footage allowed us to take on more ambitious projects. My personal journey paralleled this professional growth. Weekly sessions with Dr. Morrison helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships and establish healthier patterns for the future. The work wasn't easy, requiring me to confront painful truths about my childhood and the unrealistic expectations I had maintained well into adulthood. "The greatest gift you can give yourself is acceptance," Dr. Morrison told me during one particularly breakthrough session. "Not acceptance of mistreatment, but acceptance that you cannot change others, only your response to them." This wisdom guided my evolving relationship with Jake. After the gala, he had made consistent efforts to maintain our sibling bond while respecting my boundaries regarding our parents. We met for dinner every few weeks, carefully avoiding discussions about family unless I initiated them. His support during the gala aftermath had gone a long way toward repairing the trust damaged by the anniversary dinner incident. "They asked about you at Sunday dinner," he mentioned carefully during one of our meals. "Mom saw your feature in Architectural Digest." "And what did you say?" I asked, curious rather than anxious about his response. I told them you were doing exceptionally well and changed the subject, he replied with a small smile. I'm learning not to be their messenger. As December approached, the inevitable gold-embossed invitation arrived, the annual Taylor family Christmas gathering. In previous years, I had attended these events out of obligation, enduring my parents' subtle criticisms and the curious glances of relatives who had clearly heard the fictional version of my life. This year, I placed the unopened invitation in my desk drawer and felt nothing but relief at my decision not to attend. Instead, I planned a Christmas dinner for my chosen family, Zoe, Taylor, and other friends who had supported me through both struggles and successes. Are you sure you don't want to go? Zoe asked when I told her my decision. Just to show them how well you're doing? That's exactly why I'm not going, I explained. I don't need to prove anything to them anymore. That's the real freedom. 2 weeks before Christmas, my assistant buzzed my office intercom. Amelia, there's a William Taylor here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. My father's unexpected appearance sent a momentary jolt of anxiety through me, but it quickly subsided. This was my professional space, my territory. Send him in, please. He entered hesitantly, looking somehow smaller than I remembered in my creative domain. His expensive suit and perfectly knotted tie contrasted with the casual creative energy of the studio. Impressive space, he commented, glancing around at the design boards and material samples. Business seems to be doing well. It is, I confirmed, remaining seated behind my desk. What can I do for you, Dad? He shifted uncomfortably and used to being at a disadvantage in any conversation. You didn't respond to the Christmas invitation. I'm not coming this year, I said simply. I've made other plans. Your mother will be disappointed. I doubt that, I replied without bitterness, just stating a fact. We both know these gatherings are more about appearances than actual family connection. He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. Amelia, I think we may have been too harsh at the anniversary dinner. This was as close to an apology as he had ever come, but I noticed the careful wording, too harsh rather than wrong, and the suggestion that the problem was a single incident rather than a lifetime pattern. It wasn't just the anniversary dinner, Dad. It was 32 years of conditional approval and active undermining of my choices and career. We wanted what was best for you, he insisted, falling back on the familiar justification. No, I corrected gently. You wanted what looked best to others. There's a difference. He had no response to this simple truth. After an uncomfortable silence, he tried a different approach. Several of our friends have hired you since the gala. They speak very highly of your work. That's nice to hear, I said, recognizing this as his version of a peace offering, acknowledgement that others in his social circle valued what I did. Perhaps we could start fresh, he suggested. Come to Christmas, and we'll make an effort to appreciate your choices more visibly. The careful phrasing revealed everything, not actually valuing my choices, but appearing to do so. It was the same superficial concern with appearances that had defined our relationship my entire life. I appreciate the invitation, I said diplomatically, but a fresh start would require acknowledgement of past actions and genuine change, not just a temporary truce for a holiday dinner. What exactly do you want from us, Amelia? He asked with a hint of the impatience I remembered from childhood discussions. I don't want anything from you anymore, I realized as I spoke the words. That's the difference. I'm open to a relationship based on mutual respect, but I no longer need your approval or support to validate my choices. I walked him to the door, maintaining polite professionalism. As he prepared to leave, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. You've become formidable, he said finally. Your mother and I may have underestimated you. It wasn't an apology or even real acknowledgement of their behavior, but it was perhaps all he was capable of offering. Goodbye, Dad. Merry Christmas to you and Mom. A week later, my mother called. Our conversation followed a similar pattern, indirect suggestions that I reconsider Christmas attendance, subtle references to my recent professional success, but no meaningful acknowledgement of past behavior or genuine interest in my life beyond appearances. "I understand your father visited your new studio," she said. "He was quite impressed, in his way." "It was an interesting conversation," I replied neutrally. "Amelia, families should be together at Christmas," she pressed. "Especially when there have been misunderstandings." "Mom, what happened at the anniversary dinner and throughout my life weren't misunderstandings. They were choices you and Dad made about how to treat me." Her silence told me she wasn't ready or able to engage with this reality. "Well, the invitation remains open," she said finally. "Your cousin Patricia will be bringing her new fiancé. He's a surgeon at Mass General." Even now, she couldn't resist highlighting status and connections. Some things would never change. The realization brought sadness but no longer pain or disappointment. "I hope you all have a lovely time," I said sincerely. "My plans are set for this year." Christmas Eve in my apartment with my chosen family was everything the Taylor formal gathering was not: warm, genuine, and accepting. We cooked together, exchanged thoughtful gifts, and shared stories without judgment or pretense. Looking around at these people who valued me for exactly who I was, I felt a profound sense of belonging that no biological family connection had ever provided. As the new year began, my business continued to thrive. The studio expanded again, taking over an adjacent space to accommodate our growing client list. Each successful project built our reputation further, creating a self-sustaining momentum that no outside interference could diminish. One particularly meaningful project came from a young artist establishing her first gallery. Her budget was modest, but her passion reminded me of my younger self. I took special interest in the design, creating a space that would showcase her work while reflecting her unique vision. At the opening reception, her tearful thanks for creating exactly what she had imagined but couldn't articulate reinforced why I had chosen this path despite my parents' disapproval. Dr. Morrison and I began spacing our sessions further apart as I developed stronger internal resources for managing family dynamics. "You've done remarkable work," she told me during one session. "Not just in establishing boundaries, but in truly understanding that your worth isn't determined by their ability to see it." This hard-won wisdom became the foundation for all my relationships, professional and personal. I no longer sought validation from external sources but built confidence from within. The freedom this created allowed me to take creative risks in my designs and set clearer boundaries in all areas of my life. On a bright spring morning, I stood in the doorway of my expanded studio watching my team prepare for a major client presentation. The space hummed with creative energy and purposeful activity. Natural light streamed through the industrial windows, illuminating design boards and material samples. This was the manifestation of my vision, built on my terms despite every obstacle. A young design student we had hired as an intern approached hesitantly. "Ms. Taylor? The clients for the waterfront project are here." "Thank you, Lily," I smiled, noticing her nervous excitement. "Remember, they're just people looking for someone to help make their vision reality. We have the skills to do that beautifully." As I walked toward the conference room to greet the clients, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The painful rejection at my parents' anniversary dinner had ultimately been the catalyst for complete liberation from seeking their approval. While the relationship remained complicated and likely always would, I no longer defined myself through their limited perspective. The true measure of success wasn't found in expensive addresses or social connections, but in creating spaces where people felt truly at home, just as I had finally found my own sense of belonging. By defining worth on my own terms, I had built something far more valuable than the superficial acceptance I had once desperately sought. As I reached for the conference room door, I paused for a brief moment of gratitude for the difficult path that had led to this place of authentic self-acceptance. Then I stepped forward to welcome my clients into a space that represented everything I had become: creative, resilient, and finally, completely my own. Have you ever had to choose between seeking approval and being true to yourself? What would you have done in Amelia's situation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message of self-worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that your value isn't determined by others' ability to see it.